Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Novabugs 1975. YouTubers on the rise. Reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends. Novabug Novabugs 1975.
Hey YouTube, Novabugs Post 1975 and welcome to a video response. It's been absolutely yonks since I've done one of these. Pretty sure you know who it's to because it's in the description. But this is a video response to my very good buddy Chris. You probably know him as Novabug, and it's a video response to his Friday foursome from last week. I haven't done a video response in ages, mainly because a topic hasn't really come up that it's absolutely, you know, sunk my battleship, if you will. I've done no preparation whatsoever. I'm just going to sit here and wing it because I think that's the best way to do a video response. Why did this topic tickle my fancy? It's simply because it was gaming magazines from back in the day, and 4 of them. Now, I've talked about gaming magazines many times, particularly like the things you used to get on the front of them, you know, cover tapes basically, and demos and stuff like that. That were a godsend when you had no money as a kid. But you know, I mean, I've generalised about them, but to have to specifically break it down into 4, I like that. I like that a lot. You see, gaming magazines are still around. You know, they're still around. You know, there's still a few of them, but not like, you know, the 80s, not like the early 90s. And if you're of a certain vintage, such as myself and Chris, you will remember that they were an absolutely massive deal because the sheer number of different micros, you know, pre-consoles, different micros that were knocking around in the day, each had multiple gaming magazines. And also it was the birth of, I can't think of the word, dare I say literature? That's probably not the right term, but you know, there had never been a magazine devoted to gaming, let alone, or more so I should say right at the start, a magazine devoted to a computer. So it was a whole thing where it was finding its feet, and because the ZX Spectrum came out in 1982, obviously my number 4 is going to be how my number 4 and 3 are going to be devoted to ZX Spectrum magazines, because it's my first computer, my favourite computer of all time, and obviously my first experience of games. So number 4, I'll see if I can find some pictures of some of these and put them up. If I remember, I probably will remember because I'll have to edit this at some point, so you know, it's all good. Number 4 would be Sinclair User. Now, here's a picture. Now, I don't remember if this was the first, but it was certainly one of the first ZX Spectrum gaming magazine. Well, no, I keep saying gaming magazines, but they weren't gaming magazines at the start. They were a bit of everything: programming, games, peripherals, guides to buying, things like this. You know, it wasn't until obviously gaming went through the roof they kind of whittled it down into basically a magazine that was more aimed at kids, because a lot of these were aimed at adults when they first came out. But Sinclair User was the first one that our mum got on order from the local post office, and we would get it once a month, and we'd have to share it between myself, my twin, and my older brother, which, you know, doesn't go well. And as I said, there was a bit of everything in it for all aspects of computing, and initially at the start it was aimed at adults. All we were really interested in was the adverts for games, full-page adverts. They were absolutely fantastic. The stuff for Ocean was the stuff of legends, you know, like the Rambos, the Knight Riders, the Street Hawks, and the whole fact that often these games, you know, were advertised 6 to 8 months before they even came out. And another thing about this magazine was the black and white adverts, where you could order games cheaper than the high street. And they would let you pre-order for these adverts of games. Ocean, I'm looking at you. They, you know, weren't even out. And I say pre-order, they were saying they were out. The people in the black and whites. But it was all part and parcel of just why we loved it. Combination of those adverts. We didn't give a shit about programming, even though our dad was trying to make us program it because he bought it as an educational toy. We just cared about the pretty pictures and the game reviews. And in Sinclair User back then, they were tiny little snippets like this. Like, imagine A4 and then 1, 2, 3 like that. And they had a 1 to 5 star rating, and then 5 would be Sinclair User Classic. How much information you could get out about a game, or what you liked about it, what you disliked about it, the games, the graphics, the controls, and, you know, the structure and stuff like that, in a chunk like that was obviously ridiculous. But this was a very early magazine, and while it's not my favourite Spectrum magazine, that will be next, it was the first one, and it was a game changer, getting a magazine devoted to your computer. You know, it was fantastic. So I will forever have a place in my heart for Sinclair User. Obviously, in its sort of the mid years of its run, it realised that games were a thing, and it had fantastic cover art and stuff like that. And so it spread into this basically nothing but a games magazine, and the reviews would take up to maybe one full page, maybe two full pages, and it was, you know, it knew that this was the market it was now catering to. And it was fantastic, and that was the period I loved it the most. And then they developed their mascot, Kamikaze Bear, who was awesome, and their cover art was absolutely fantastic. But, you know, I remember it from the start when it came out, when it was very limited. I liked its mid-run, and this is fair to say for all magazines, every single, not just Spectrum magazines, but like Commodore Amstrad, stuff like that, towards the end of their lives, when they were competing against consoles and stuff like that, and it was all about the cover tape wars, where you'd have a tape on the front with 6 old full-price games. It was all about that to attract customers, and these things became mere pamphlets of the glory that they were. But Sinclair User was the first magazine we ever got, and yeah, it's not the best, but it's one I have a very special place in my heart. My favourite Spectrum game magazine, again, initially started as a bit of an all-rounder, programming, adverts, places to buy stuff, hardware reviews, things like that, opinions, letters page, as they all did, you know, Sinclair User, stuff like that as well. But yeah, my second favourite of all time is Crash magazine, because, see, it's safe to say all early computer magazines were adult magazines, adults, aimed at adults, not adult magazines. Get your heads out of the gutters, kids. But then they find out, you know, about games and stuff like that, and they changed their, you know, to match their audience, which was kids buying games. So Crash started the same way. Crash magazine was amazing. But Crash was, I wouldn't say adult-based, but it had a harder edge. It was cool, basically, more cooler and harder edge than Sinclair User, because its cover art was absolutely fantastic. I mean, people still lose their shit over it. You can buy books that have nothing but all the cover art through. I'll show a picture. But yeah, Crash had a more defined sense of humour than Sinclair User, much more sharper sense of humour, more kind of hard edge. I mean, it had a high score page where you send your scores in. I think you had to take a picture of your screen, and it was a double spread in the middle of the magazine. And it was, people would send a picture of themselves, and they'd put their heads on trees, on spikes, guillotines, axes, and stuff like that. I know for a fact that Steve Benway had one of his scores published in it, and I want to say maybe Guru Larry. I'm not sure, but definitely Steve Benway. But stuff like that was cool. But the art on the cover and all the artwork through the magazine, you know, because you get snippets of it on pages where they were reviewing games and stuff like that, was very, like, you know, mature comic artwork. It was absolutely fantastic. And not just that, I mean, like, some of the images combining spectrums and turning them into spaceships and having space battles and stuff like that, and these fully painted, realised covers were just absolutely absolutely amazing. It was the sister magazine of Zap 64. So was that the same bloke or bird who drew for that? But yeah, Crash was just, and they had Crash Smash instead of you know, Sinclair User Classic, and they do one page, double pages, sometimes, you know, 3-4 reviews on a page if they were lesser games, because they wouldn't just review amazing games, they would review shit games as well. It was everything that was out around about that time, that month, and stuff like that, and then previews and exclusives. And they also had a comic book strip in it called Terminal Man. Look up Terminal Man on Google. I believe you can buy it as a graphic novel, but it's quite pricey, and it constantly goes in and out of print. But it's about a bloke who falls off a cliff and dies and then gets merged with a computer and reanimated and stuff like that. Spoilers! That's all I'm giving you. But yeah, Crash. The reviews, you know, they were more detailed than Sinclair User, even when Sinclair User skipped the little 1/3 thing and went full page. But they, like I said, they're sharper wits, and you felt more for the personality. They promoted the individuals more. That's something that other magazines adopted that we'll get onto. But they promoted sort of the individual reviewers more, so you got to feel for their personality. But yeah, amazing artwork, brilliant sense of humour. Love the whole high score thing in the middle. Again, they became a mere pamphlet at the end of their life in the cover tape wars, which was really, really sad. And then eventually they went completely under and ended up being merged with Sinclair User, and I think, or your Sinclair, maybe Sinclair User, and I think Sinclair User actually made a statement at the time saying they may be our biggest and #1 competitor, but it's always sad, you know, when a fellow Spectrum magazine of many, many long-standing years goes under. But yeah, I always take one thing from Crash magazine was the absolutely amazing cover art listed throughout it, sharp sense of humour, and like I said, the high score, you know, mutated, decapitated children's, for the most part, children's heads. in the middle of it. So that's my computer covered. Those are that Sinclair User has the #1 place in my heart because it was the first. Crash was my favourite Spectrum magazine. I mean, your Sinclair was good, but it had a sense of humour, but it was more wholesome. Kind of didn't like that kind of pussified sort of approach. Give me some sort of like Crash magazine edge to it, if you will. The next one will be CVG. I think so many people remember CVG. That started really, really, really early on, and I think we got into it, my family, simply because someone gave us a bunch of old CVGs and we read it. So I started buying it after that because it was a multi-format magazine. Now, it's safe to say, my generation, unless you were super rich or super spoiled, you wouldn't have multiple machines back then. We're talking like, when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, stuff like that. After 10 or 11, such as myself, you had multiple part-time jobs and bought what you want. But before that, family machine and things like that. So you wouldn't buy a multi-format magazine. You would just buy one that covered your system. And I think the people who made these magazines, particularly CVG, because CVG was cool as well. CVG led on to a lot of other magazines and basically set a template for cool that everyone else tried to copy and mostly failed. But yeah, they knew that people wouldn't have multiple systems, but they also knew that at some point when you got roped into that whole playground wars and defending your computer and stuff like that, you wanted to see what the enemy was doing. You were curious. It's like driving by an accident on the motorway. Everyone slows down. So they had something going there. So it covered Spectrum, Amstrad, Commodore, Amiga, Atari ST, everything. But the bit where I got really, really into it, because I mean, I used to look at an amazing cover art as well, by the way, not as good as CVG. And again, it put it out there that you became familiar with the individual. Each individual would review each game, and you got a feel for their personalities, which would lead on to the next magazine more so, which absolutely nailed that, defined that, and pinned that down. But yeah, I love looking at all the the computers and stuff like that. Even looking at stuff like every now and then like Archimedes, more so its early day. Machines I could never possibly afford. But where it really, this is where it struck a chord, and this is why I bought it for every month, literally for 2, 3, maybe at most 4 or 5 pages in the middle, where it saw all the early consoles, like the ones where it properly took off, your NES, your Master System, stuff like this, your Game Boy, it saw that these things, they were coming, they were taking over, how they done in Japan, North America and stuff like that, particularly the NES. And it saw that this was a big thing, and this was the next big deal of gaming. So it devoted, pages in the middle, and so it started to cover, stuff like PC Engine, mainly the Master System and the NES, and then, start talking about, and covering Mega Drive, and explaining this whole big world of console gaming in Japan that just blew me away. And it was because of Mean Machines in CVG that I bought a Sega Master System. Reading reviews of stuff like Wonder Boy, and many of the early sort of Master System games. And these were very small reviews, but it was colour, because not all of these magazines at the time were colour. Till later years, or the mid to end of their run as a magazine. But yeah, it's hard to put into words what an impact the Mean Machine pages and CVG had on me, because that's basically why I got a Master System. I mean, that's what made me into a Sega fanboy. But when I first saw these, I was oohing and ahhing. I don't think I've ever really talked about this apart from a few times, which is Master System or NES. Master System or NES. NES is more expensive. Master System, particularly second-hand, which is the route I went, as most people know. And it's Sega. And obviously, I was schooled in Sega arcade games at this point. I loved the Shinobis, the E-SWATs. I loved your Afterburner, your Outrun, your Shinobis, your older beasts. So that's what swung it for me. So I went with a Master System. But it was these pages in the middle of a multi-format magazine I bought that magazine for, mainly. But also to see how the enemy was doing, when you would because as I said, you wouldn't buy a magazine that was multi-system. You just buy one for yours. But CVG was so cool and covered it so well, you did, to see what the enemy was doing and things like that. I can't really explain it, but it was just those initial chunks of magazines that someone gave to us that made me start buying it every month. I'm not really sure that they did sort of cover tapes. I do know that CVG was one of the oldest magazines, or earliest magazines, be it multi-formats or not. But The number one, and I'm sure this will be a number one for a lot of people, I'm pretty sure most people will know what I'm going to talk about because it's in the title, or in the introduction I should say, for my videos on my channel. And that would be Mean Machines magazine, which literally CVG saw how popular these little reviews were. These four or five pages were in the middle of CVG, so they went, we can make a whole magazine out of this. And obviously the console market was just gearing up in the UK, and so you had your NES and you had your Master System, but you had all these machines going on and fighting against each other in Japan, and that was cool because we were always so far behind the rest of the world, far behind Japan, far behind North America in the UK when it came to getting these systems. So they started reviewing stuff that was officially out in this country, and then they would do reviews of stuff and say import, and review Japanese PC Engine games, Japanese Mega Drive games. They covered the birth of the SNES and stuff like that, and then started reviewing SNES games. And it was, and they had these brilliant little cartoon characters for each in the was it Jazz Rignall? I can't remember. You know who he is, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, they had a little cartoon character against a comment box with the final scores and stuff like that, and it really was personality of the individuals introduced, and you would all start to get, my favourite reviewer was Jazz, but you'd have a favourite reviewer, and they had previews and stuff like that. It did amazing April Fools. They fooled the tits out of everyone. Fantastic cover art, and I got this religiously, absolutely religiously, as many people did, and obviously I imported my Japanese Mega Drive, and Mean Machines then kind of more so covered the UK Mega Drive, and then the odd import here. But having a Mega Drive before the magazine started coming out and stuff like that, and felt like I was on it from the start, and I was cool because I could get the games they were talking about that weren't even out for the UK Mega Drive, and it was all part and parcel. And even though I only had a Mega Drive and stepped up from a Master System, you really wanted to know what the other systems were doing. Like the PC Engine, I probably couldn't have afforded it, but my God, did I want the PC Engine that this magazine covered in length to come out in the UK, and it's full colour. Everything about it was full colour. They'd when they review a game such as Sonic or Gynog or stuff like that, they would start to change the little caricature of the reviewer and give them the head and the body of the characters in the game. Amazing sense of humour, bags and bags of personality. This was easily, when it came to personality of the reviewers, this magazine wiped the floor with absolutely everything else. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I wish I had my full set. I had a full set for years, and then for some reason I should say, like a stupid numpty, I binned them all because I'm a fool, and it still hurts. But yeah, Mean Machines was hands down the greatest to this day, period, game magazine ever made. Modern game magazines, I know you try a bit really edgy, more adult based, kind of the complete opposite of what it was, but you don't hold a candle to that magazine. Where I lost interest in Mean Machines was because once I'd upgraded to my Super Famicom, and then moved on long enough to lose or get rid of my Mega Drive, Japanese Mega Drive, I still read Mean Machines. I still wanted it to be a multi-format, magazine. Obviously, they knew that because the SNES now come out officially in the United Kingdom in this absolutely bollocks, crap, PAL form, shockingly bad that thing was. That we can do a spin-off magazine, Mean Machines Nintendo. So it became Mean Machines Sega and Mean Machines Nintendo. I don't know if Mean Machines Nintendo was called Mean Machines Nintendo, maybe it was something else. The reason I say that was I had no interest in buying it because to me at that point, it may be my favourite magazine ever, and I loved it back then, but I don't know, I thought it was very sad that they split up part of its formula, where its attraction was gone. I don't know, lots of people have probably argued, but why would I want to read about Mega Drive games if I got a SNES, and vice versa. But I guess it came from CVG to some degree, that I always love, once I got past my Spectrum days and saw that there was a wide world of other, systems out there, and being informed of what they were, that just stuck with me, and I just loved multi-format magazines, and that Mean Machines was the multi-format magazine. I've kind of waffled all over the shop because I've sat here and winged it, off the cuff, but yeah, this was a brilliant Friday foursome, Chris. Absolutely fantastic. So anyone else out there, you want to do a response to this, I put a link to Chris's channel in the doohickey down below, and he is in my channel list over there, and I really do recommend you go and check him out, particularly if you like Amstrad, because he's the Lord and Master of all things Amstrad. Anyway, as always, I'd love to know what you think, but also go and check out his original video And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.